Welcome back to another episode of Musings from the Mountains. My name is Zach Anderson, joined by Keenan Cummings and a special guest we have today, Jared Ramirez from RedRaidersports.com. Jared, it's nice to meet you. Nice to have you on to talk some Texas Tech versus WVU this Saturday. You guys have started out 1-2, losses to Oregon, losses to Wyoming. Tell me what you've seen about this team so far that WVU fans should know about.
So I think what people can come to expect from this Texas Tech team, at least through these first three games, they're going to compete. They're going to play really hard. They were right there against Oregon. I mean, they pushed Oregon to the limit. They started off really hot against Wyoming and then just kind of faltered the rest of the way through and then just dismantled Tarleton State, an FCS opponent this past weekend. A lot of their struggles have been really self-inflicted. I haven't really I mean, even during like the Oregon game, it never really felt like Oregon was just like this superior team. It really felt like Tech was able to stay up there and compete with them. Yeah, a lot of their mistakes have been just really self-inflicted stuff. I think they compete really hard and I think they play really hard.
When you look at this Texas Tech team, how similar is it to the one that West Virginia saw last year? And are they doing a lot of the same things on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to kind of compare it to the team last year, it's going to be a little bit different. Just the biggest thing is going to be at quarterback. Last year against West Virginia, you had Baron Morton playing quarterback, and they were able to run a lot of tempo stuff. I haven't really seen that a whole lot so far through the first three games. They haven't really gone kind of that tempo style that they normally would. Defensively, it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. They're going to try to win up front. I think the secondary is actually playing a lot better this year than they were last year, just as a whole. And it's been kind of a bit of a flip. I think they've been a little bit underwhelmed with how the front four has been playing, and they've actually been really impressed with what they've seen out of their secondary and their linebackers. So that's probably one thing to expect is it's going to be a little bit of a flip. They're still trying to get that front four to really function as a whole and trying to get more production out of them. But I do think like the secondary is very much improved.
So Coach Brown recently, especially in his Monday press conference, talked a lot about the Texas Tech tempo and something they're known for. Why do you think we haven't seen it as much early this season?
I think, and it's really kind of interesting because they were doing that against Wyoming. That first, I'd say like 10, 11 minutes of that Wyoming game, it was all tempo. It was like that offense was moving. They were in a rhythm. And then for whatever reason, like they just haven't really been able to get into that rhythm like that ever since then. I think a lot of it has been maybe because they've been a little bit more they've been running the ball a lot more with Tyler Shuck. Like they've been having that quarterback run game be pretty prevalent in that offense. And I don't know if they necessarily like to go to tempo out of that. They were in a really good rhythm against Tarleton State for a good amount of a good portion there. They only had like a 3-point quarter in the second quarter. That's something that they talked about they wanted to improve on. But I mean, that first quarter they were really firing on all cylinders. It's just been finding that rhythm. I just think they've been kind of struggling to find that rhythm. I think a lot of it is you have plays that don't go anywhere. And it's really hard to get into tempo whenever you're playing like you got one play goes somewhere and then the next play doesn't.
So Coach Brown talked about a couple of things I wanted to mention and hear your opinion on. He mentioned the receiver group. He said they're one of the most well-rounded in the Big 12. And he also mentioned running back Taj Brooks. So when it comes to offensive talent and personnel, what are you seeing from those groups?
So I think like you mentioned, Taj Brooks, that's the premier back. He's been there. He's been getting significant snaps. This is like his third year now where he's been getting like a significant amount of carries. We didn't really see a whole lot of him against Wyoming. Didn't really see a whole lot of him either against Oregon. They were really heavily running Tyler Shuck against Oregon. But this last game, they ran him 19 times and he got like 160 yards on the ground. It was like one of his best performances, I think, of his career in terms of just pure yardage. He's a really big physical back, but he's still really shifty. I mean, he's like 5'10, 5'11, but he's like 225 pounds. So he's a really big physical back. Like I think they've been telling him they want him to use every ounce or every pound of muscle that he has, make defenders tackle him, but he's still got some shiftiness to him. He still can make people miss in the open field. That was really working for him against Tarleton. And then you mentioned like the wide receiver room. Jaron Bradley was a preseason All Big 12 selection. He's been playing pretty well so far. I think you maybe want to see a little bit more production out of that receiver room as a whole. It's not necessarily just him. It's been some of the other guys. They've been having some really untimely drops, which have also been killing drives. Cause I mean, you've got a guy 10, 20 yards open downfield and they just drop a wide open pass. That
WVU can relate to that one.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
kills your drives, man. Like that has happened several times. It happened against Oregon and in some really big moments. Happened against Wyoming. I know Bradley had one at like the 5-yard line that he dropped. He's been pretty solid though. Like he makes plays. He makes plays when they matter. And then you go to a guy, I think another guy to mention is probably Miles Price. I think he's been a little bit better than Bradley this year. He's a bit smaller. He's a lot shiftier. He's what they'd call a twitchy guy. So he's a lot smaller. He's a little bit quicker on his feet. He knows how to find space. He'll get open and he'll make a play. I think he's scored a touchdown in all 3 games so far. So, I mean, he knows how to find the end zone for sure.
Do you think the record is a little deceiving? I know there were high hopes with Texas Tech this year, and obviously their bigger goals are still in play. They lost 2 really close football games, had a chance to win both of them. Do you think that, you look at that 1-2, that's a deceiving record early this season?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, they're sitting at 1-2 right now, and they very easily, with if a few plays swing their way, they could very easily be 3-0. That's just kind of the way it's gone so far. It's like I mentioned earlier, a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. That Wyoming game, there were several Wyoming drives that were kept going because of Tech penalties. And that was a really big thing, was the penalties. They turned the ball over 4 times against Oregon, which it's honestly a miracle that they only lost by 8 points. There were 3 like legitimate turnovers, and then the 4th one was like the Hail Mary interception at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you think about it, three intercept or let's see, 2 picks and a fumble, I think is what it was before that. It's a miracle they were in that game, honestly. I mean, you turn the ball over 3 times and you're expecting to get ran out the building, and they hung up there with Oregon. I think the record is a little bit deceiving just because they've competed in every single one of those games. They weren't able to get a rhythm going against Wyoming. And I think Wyoming's game plan, they just executed perfectly, and they knew what they were doing, and they were able to spring on Tech, and that's how Wyoming won that one. But I mean, Tech was in that one against Oregon, and that was a really big one just because it didn't really, they had a 9-point lead in the 4th quarter. They weren't chasing that game, and they just kind of let it slip themselves. So yeah, I think the record is a little bit deceiving.
This has been a weird series for both these teams. West Virginia won 5 in a row. Texas Tech has won 4 in a row. And it's a lot of different faces every year. It seems like it's just weird, weird series. How is Texas Tech approaching this? Obviously, they've had to earn them in Morgantown when they've won there, 2019 aside, but usually West Virginia plays them pretty tough in Morgantown. How are you looking at this game? How is the Red Raiders looking at this challenge?
I think, a lot of it is it's a lot of, I don't know. They're looking at it as they're focusing more on themselves than I think they are really on West Virginia. And I think a lot of that is just kind of based on how the outcome of those 2 losses were, just because a lot of it was on them. I think they're in that mentality. Like, it doesn't really matter what the other team is doing if we're messing up what we're doing. You gotta fix all of those internal mistakes first before you really focus on the outside stuff. I mean, they've talked about it before. Like I think they understand how hard it is to play in Morgantown. I think there's been several players still on this team that won not only in 21, but also in 19. I think there's like 8 or 9 players that are still on the team from that win. And so I think a lot of it more so is just they're trying to fix what they've been messing up so far. And that's kind of where their focus has been.
So defensively, what are you seeing from Tech schematically wise, and what have they done so far that maybe they need to improve on going into this West Virginia game?
So schematically, it's very much like a 4-2-5. They like to run 2 defensive tackles, and then they'll have 2 edge rushers is typically kind of like their base look. They'll have 2 middle linebackers. You got 2 corners, 2 safeties, and then a guy that they call the star. That's a bit of like a safety outside linebacker kind of position. And that's a position like that'll drop into coverage quite a bit, but then will also help out a little bit in terms of like setting edges and stuff like that. And I think the biggest thing they've been needing to improve on is bringing the quarterback down. We've heard the words pass rush lanes so much through these first 3 weeks because we heard a lot of hype about the edge rushers, number one, the Steve Linton and Miles Cole, number 7 and number 6. We've heard a lot about their athleticism and their ability off the line and how great they were going to be at edge rushers. And they just haven't really produced like that all that well so far. They've been making pressure, which is it's very funny. Like they've been making pressure. Those guys and then like the defensive tackles have been getting pressure on the quarterback. They just haven't really been able to finish the job and bring him down. Andrew Peasley, the Wyoming quarterback, did a great job of avoiding pressure, whether that be sneaking up, crawling up through the middle of the pocket or getting outside. He did a great job of doing that. Bo Nix, that's how he was so effective in the fourth quarter of that game against Oregon, was he was getting out of the pocket and making plays out there. That's really like the biggest area I think they're trying to see improvement is actually being able to bring down the quarterback. They've been making pressure. They've been getting there. They just haven't been able to really get home and bring him down. So yeah, that's probably the biggest area of improvement so far that they're trying to see.
How do they look against the run? Obviously West Virginia wants to run the football. I think they're going to throw it more than they did against Pitt. I mean, that game set back football 50 years, I think. But how are they against the run? How do you think that matchup plays out?
What's been really surprising is how effective they've been against the run so far. I think going into that week against Oregon, a lot of focus was on their two really good running backs, Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington. And for the most part, they kept those guys in check. It was really interesting to see how well they handled the run. It was the same kind of story with Wyoming too. Wyoming was really a really run heavy team as well, and they didn't really get a whole lot of production out of their backs. It was more so Peasley, the quarterback, that was creating those plays in the run game. But as far as like a traditional defense against the running back sort of deal, they've actually been holding up fairly well. It's been surprising, actually. I think a lot of us have been really surprised at how well they've handled the run and how ineffective they've been in the pass rush.
So you've mentioned this a little bit, and I just want you to pick out maybe a couple of keys for Texas Tech. I can't say that. Wow. Texas Tech to get the win. There, I got it finally. For the Red Raiders to get the win on Saturday, what are some keys that you have, and maybe what's a prediction that you have for the game in Morgantown?
So I think, if Tech's going to go in there and get a win, I think they're going to have to maybe follow some sort of the same principles as what they did last year. I think they're going to really have to hammer home on that tempo just because, I mean, I've seen it. We've all seen it here. Like whenever they get into that tempo, that offense really moves and that offense is almost unstoppable. I think it's a lot of it is going to start with the quarterback. I think Tyler Shuck's decision-making has to be a whole lot quicker this week than what it's been in the past few weeks. He's going to make plays on the ground. It's just like he's got to be more consistent through the air. Can't have those untimely drops from the receivers either. The offensive line is going to have to play a big part in it as well. I think defensively, y'all have made me aware, like West Virginia is a really run heavy team. I think I think they're capable. I think that front four and even the linebackers can play a really big part in that. I think as long as if they keep doing what they've been doing in terms of stopping the run, I think they'll be able to handle the run game. As far as like a score prediction goes, I don't think this one will be super, super high scoring. I told Keenan, I think 27-16 in favor of Tech, or 27-17 in favor of Tech is probably my prediction. I've never seen, or I haven't really seen a whole lot of, what is it? Nico Marchiol? Is that how you say his name?
Yep.
Yes.
I don't know like a whole lot of what to expect from him, but I know they're probably.
We don't either.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have no idea.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know they'll probably lean on that run game pretty hard, and if that's the case, I think Tech is plenty capable of stopping it.
Well, thanks once again, Jared. Really appreciate you here coming on and giving us some insight. And are you making it up to the game?
I'm not making it up to that game. No, we actually we're going to Waco here in a couple weeks for when they take on Baylor. And then a couple weeks after that, we're actually going to Provo for that game against BYU. So,
well, that'll be fun.
Yeah, we're really excited. So I will not be making it out to Morgantown, not yet, at least.
Well, you got to make it sometime. Get yourself a pepperoni roll and see the sights out here. It's beautiful this time of year. So
All right. Yeah,
For
pepperoni
sure.
roll. I'll make sure to keep note of that.
thank you, buddy.
All right.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Have a good one. It was nice to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you too.
There he said it. I think that there are, you look at the records, a 2-1 team versus a 1-2 team, and I do agree with him. That's why I asked the question. I think the records are a little deceiving. I think this is a very good Texas Tech football team that really kind of tripped over themselves through the first couple of weeks. I felt very confident. I don't know why, but I just had a feeling that West Virginia was going to win this football game with Garrett Green as the starter. If he does not play, which, as we all know, Neil went over this earlier in the week, it's going to be Nico, and we really don't know what to expect out of Nico. We know what he brings talent wise. We know that there's a lot of upside there, but West Virginia is going to have to throw the football if they want to win this game. They're going to have to score points. This isn't going to be like last week. You're not going to win this game with 17 points. I just don't think that's possible. Your defense would have to play lights out. Texas Tech is a much, much better offensive football team than Pittsburgh ever dreamed about being at this point in the season, and they can do it. They can do it through running the ball, throwing the ball. They got a pretty good offensive line, so I think that this is a difficult matchup. I'm kind of hedging a little bit. I picked West Virginia earlier in the week in the 3-2-1, and I feel almost like a turncoat in a sense that I'm leaning more towards the other way. I think that really now I've gone from feeling that West Virginia, they understand what this game means. And I am encouraged by how physical, how tough, how smart this team has played through 3 weeks. I do feel like that needs to be mentioned because it is something we wrote about, we talked about all offseason, how West Virginia had to get better in those areas. Neil talked about it, and they have. They haven't beaten themselves. But I don't think this is a game where just not beating yourself is going to be enough. And the question to me on the West Virginia side is, can that offense, if Green can't go, and when you're in a walking boot, I don't think it's the most conducive thing to expect someone to play, even if it is precautionary. But if Green can't go, Zach, can this offense score enough to hang with Texas Tech?
I'll be honest, Kean, I don't think so. It's gonna be a challenge to see a full game with Nico under center, and that's not a knock on him. That's a knock on the fact of the inexperience there, and the inexperience with the whole group. And I think it's tough, especially from what Jared said about how well Tech has stopped the run. If West Virginia can't rely on the run, that's gonna be a problem because we didn't see a lot of confident passing play calls against Pitt, and that's what led to such a 1940s-esque game. So, I mean, you're seeing a very new challenging fold in the West Virginia offense. And contrary to what Jared said, I wanted to mention this too, is I think Texas Tech wants to go to their tempo. That's what they're known for. That's what Joey McGuire and that group is known for. I think they're going to want to do that. And that is challenging, especially when you see Pitt roll out and have an amazing first drive like they did last week. That's going to be tough to start out and have to play against that. So I think those are some challenges that they're going to have to see. But I think Tech will win a close one if I had to make a prediction. I would say I'm going to put it in stone. I'm going to say 27-21.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to West Virginia winning this game just because Neil Brown knows how important this is. This program needs this win, just like last week. We've said this from day one. Game 3 and game 4 were going to be the barometers for this team. You weren't going to find out much week 1 or week 2. Against all of my rational thought, West Virginia has kind of had it shoved down their throat how much Texas Tech has dominated this series of late. They get this game at home. The defense has played better. And sometimes that tempo can work against you if you get up there and go 3 and out. So I think Nico, if he does play, will play better. I do believe that wholeheartedly. I think he'll have more of an understanding of the offense. He'll know what to do. They will make a game plan for him that isn't half a flip card, as Neil alluded to. West Virginia is going to find a way. I'm going to go against my logic here and just say with all the emotion in this game, even coming off the Pitt game, getting this team at this time, I think West Virginia finds a way to do it. It's going to be close, I think. I think this game is either going to be a close West Virginia win or Texas Tech's going to win by 2 touchdowns. And I'm going to take the close West Virginia win. Somebody's got to do it. We'll have
Yeah.
coverage again. We've got coverage on the site right now throughout the week. We have some thoughts from Jared in print. If you want to read that, we'll be going through a lot of our other game day stuff and game week stuff. And as always, we'll have you loaded with coverage after the fact and heading into next week's game at TCU. So look forward to it. We will. And thank you again for joining us on another edition of Musings from the Mountains.